Hi everyone, Astromarmot here. Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like your game is actually secretly terrible? Do you worry that your players are just being nice to you and actually hate the campaign? Are you concerned that your game is possibly the worst, not just bad, but the worst game that's ever been played? Congratulations, you may have rejection sensitivity dysphoria. I'm sorry. ADHD is a complex condition with a complex set of symptoms. Exploring those symptoms and how they interact with being a game master is one of the reasons I started this channel. Today, I want to take a deep dive into one of the most common conditions associated with ADHD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria, and how it impacts the way we engage with running games. What is rejection sensitivity dysphoria? RSD is a complex emotional experience that occurs when someone feels a powerful and intense emotional response due to perceived rejection or criticism. While nobody likes rejection, people with RSD experience that rejection on a profound level that often, to an outside observer, appears disproportionate to the circumstances. A staggering 99% of people with ADHD experience RSD, and a third of people with ADHD describe RSD as the most difficult aspect of their condition. RSD is not an official diagnosis in and of itself, and it is wildly understudied, particularly in adults. It is, however, widely recognized by medical professionals since it was coined in 1990 as a useful framework for discussing emotional dysregulation in ADHD. And there are a whole host of symptoms that come with RSD, including intense emotional pain, physical discomfort, avoidance behaviors, low self-esteem, negative self-talk, and, in the worst cases, social isolation. The sensation of pain in response to rejection can be so overwhelming that people shape their lives around avoiding it. Not everyone will experience every single symptom on this list, but I'm guessing that, if you have ADHD like me, at least some of these will seem familiar. And it sucks. It's an overwhelming feeling when it hits, and it can be completely debilitating. And you don't even have to experience rejection to trigger these symptoms. Just the perception or possibility of rejection can be enough to send you into a spiral. In fact, we can roughly divide RSD triggers into three categories. External triggers, meaning rejection that comes from outside of you. This includes criticism, whether constructive or otherwise. In a game context, this could be as simple as one of your players telling you, "Hey, I think combat is taking too long," or maybe a less gently delivered critique. The important thing here is that it's the critique itself that can feel like rejection, regardless of how it's packaged. Then there are perceived triggers, meaning rejection you infer from the words or actions of others. As a game master, these are the situations where you feel as though you're putting in more effort than anyone else, or when no one responds to a message on your server, leading you to conclude that no one else cares about your game. No one has told you "I don't care," but you perceive indifference in the absence of engagement and interpret it as rejection. Finally, there are internal triggers, or the rejection we've internalized. That's the voice in your head telling you that you're the worst game master who's ever run a game and everyone is only playing with you out of some kind of contemptuous mixture of pity and boredom. For some people with RSD, this voice is the harshest critic of all, and we'll talk more about managing the voices in your head later in the video. Just to make things more fun, there's a cyclical nature to RSD as well. You worry about being rejected, which triggers social anxiety, which makes you worry more about being rejected, which makes you more anxious, and pretty soon you're in a spiral and desperately trying to climb out. The sheer weight of emotion distorts your perception, sometimes to the point that you see rejection even where it doesn't exist. And that brings us back to tabletop games. Game masters are players too, but unlike the other players at the table, we have more responsibilities both in-game and outside of it. Game mastering is a lot like cooking Thanksgiving dinner. You prepare a meal for your friends or family, set it before them, and then hope that they enjoy it. Everyone else is bringing a dish, but you're still the person most responsible for the experience everyone has. That added responsibility means we put in more time and put more pressure on ourselves to create and perform well. I pour my heart into my games, and whenever your heart is exposed, your sensitivity to others increases. We are ultimately trying to please the other people at the table, and anytime you're worried about pleasing others, rejection sensitivity dysphoria can rear its ugly head. A big problem I've both seen and experienced is that players aren't often inclined to give meaningful feedback. "It was good, I had fun," is unfortunately not enough to quell the thrust of RSD. I mean, what if they're just saying that to not hurt my feelings? Or maybe you have players who get distracted during the game, and that's hard not to take personally. Like, obviously, if my game was more interesting, they wouldn't get distracted, right? This is the devil's line of thinking. It's the negative self-talk aspect of RSD symptoms, with a healthy dash of failing to meet our own, often ridiculous expectations for ourselves. It's somewhat ironic that we can simultaneously have high expectations and low self-esteem, but that's a mystery of this condition I have yet to solve. Regardless, the lack of meaningful feedback from players can lead to us trying to fill in the blanks, and for whatever reason, we tend to fill those blanks in with the worst possible scenario. But the reality is that, on the whole, your players probably are enjoying the game. They're just less invested in it than you are, and that's okay. I don't put nearly as much of myself into the characters I play in other people's games as I do into my own game. You can't really expect a player to invest as much energy as you do. This is your meal to cook. All we can really ask is that our friends show up with their portion, eat the food, and engage with the rest of the table. Now, if your players aren't meeting baseline expectations like showing up and engaging, you have problems that won't be addressed by this video. But while playing a PC takes less work than being a GM, that doesn't mean you can't or shouldn't get substantial feedback from your players. One way I've done this in the past is to ask players at the end of each session to write down 4 things. Where are you at in the game right now? What are you most focused on in this moment? What could have been improved in the session? And what was your favorite moment? This is a hugely useful tool for both players and the Game Master. It gives you as Game Master immediate feedback on your game, and it gives the players a touch point to remind them what's going on when they come back next session. At first, the feedback I got was pretty generic, and many times the answer to what could be improved was nothing. But over time, players would open up and give me specific pointers I could work on. That takes the guesswork out of it for me. Now I know exactly what the players like and don't like, and I can take that information and use it to improve. Once your table is in the habit of doing this, you'll find you have a much more healthy and honest perspective on what works in your game and what doesn't. Also, sometimes it's easier for people to write something down than it is to say it out loud. Or maybe their issue is small and doesn't rise to the level of, I have to talk to the game master about this. But with a regular space for feedback, you can learn what those small things are and make course corrections as you go. If you feel like you're out in the woods without a clear idea of what your players actually enjoy, I recommend trying this system and seeing what it does for your table. But when you do get constructive criticism, how do you stop yourself from falling down the shame spiral? Now, to be clear, I'm not a therapist or a medical professional. I'm just a marmot who's been working on managing this all her life. What works for me may not work for you, and only a qualified medical professional can offer some of the most helpful solutions like cognitive behavioral or acceptance commitment therapy. That said, my overall strategy is what I call radical acceptance. It's not enough to say things are the way they are. What I tell myself is that everything is the way I want it to be. And this isn't a lie. I want to run a great game. I want to improve. I can't improve without feedback. Getting feedback is therefore the exact thing that I both want and need. The worst case scenario isn't that someone tells me I'm doing something wrong. The worst case scenario is that no one tells me I'm doing something wrong and I just keep doing it forever. I accept that I'm not a perfect game master and that the only person who expects me to be perfect is me. And I accept that my perspective is sometimes warped by the power of my emotions, and that feedback is the best way for me to readjust my mindset. Feedback isn't something to fear. Embrace it, learn from it, grow from it, and you will become a better game master. It also helps that I play with people who know how to give constructive criticism well. There is truly no substitute for playing with high-quality people. In short, when a player offers you a critique, the first thing to tell yourself is, this is what I want, and believe it. Then listen without judging and give yourself the chance to grow. The other strategy I use is specifically for my internal triggers, that nasty voice inside my head. This is something I adapted from the black dog metaphor for depression. A black dog is often used to describe the intrusive, dark aspects of depression and how it can show up in the life of a depressed person. What's useful here for our purposes is the idea of externalizing the condition and giving it a shape. When you start to hear negative voices in your head, treat them like another person or entity that's using your voice to trick you. Some people even give that voice a name, like, that's Miranda, and she's a real piece of work. This practice helps you put distance between your true self and your negative thought patterns. They don't have to belong to you. And once Miranda starts yapping, ask yourself, would I allow a friend to speak to me this way? If the answer is no, tell Miranda to can it. In the long term, it's a great practice to never say anything to yourself that you wouldn't say to a friend. This is hard to do at first, especially if you're used to talking down to yourself. But the more you practice it, the easier it gets. If you take nothing else away from this video, try being your own friend. It's the first step to really loving yourself. And when you learn to do that, everything else gets a whole lot easier. Finally, if you trust the people you play with, and again, don't play with people you don't trust, open up to them about what you're dealing with. Let them know that their praise and their feedback are both necessary for you to feel good about the game you're running. Ask them to be gentle with their critiques and assure them that you will listen to it without judgment. There's no need to defend yourself here. You're just one person who's running a game, probably for free, in your spare time, for fun. Just take it in, make a note of it, and then work on finding a solution. If you're easy enough to approach with feedback, players will be more likely to provide it. If you find yourself starting to spiral, take a deep breath and ask if you can continue the conversation later. It's okay to take time to intake criticism. Take a moment to think about it, check yourself on any negative self-talk that emerges from that process, and then return to the conversation with a fresh mind. Remember, this is what you want. This is how you grow. That constant striving in yourself to be better doesn't have to be a negative. It can be a positive incentive for you to learn more and become an even greater game master than you already are. And like, I don't know you, but I'm willing to bet you're a better game master than you think you are. And since I'm always right, you have to believe me. There are specific game circumstances that can trigger RSD. When you don't hear back from your players in between sessions, when their only response to the game was, yeah, I had fun, when you are the only person who's trying to schedule sessions, when players get distracted mid-game, the list goes on and on. Pay attention to yourself in the moments you feel that sense of rejection overwhelm you. What's happening to cause it? If it happens to you a lot, I recommend keeping a little journal for yourself where you track those moments that send you into a spiral. It'll give you good data on what you need to address to make it better. RSD is extremely disorienting. It affects the way we perceive ourselves, the way we perceive others, and the way we perceive our game. It distorts our perception of reality, and worst of all, it hurts a lot. All of the things that help ADHD generally, exercise, therapy, regular sleep, meditation, will help you manage your RSD as well. And I hope some of the tips I've named, getting regular feedback, dissociating from your negative self-talk, and communicating with your players, can also help to keep your RSD at bay. If you want more information on this topic, I've linked some websites in the description that go into greater detail about this condition from a whole life perspective. If you experience RSD, leave a comment about how it affects your game and what you do to manage it. I'm thinking about doing a series where I explore different ADHD symptoms and how they show up in our games. If that's something that interests you, let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. Special thanks to my supporters on Ko-Fi.com for their continued support for this channel. If you got anything out of this video and want to see more content like it in the future, consider buying me a cup of tea at Ko-Fi.com/astralmarmot. If you really need to talk through your RSD or just need someone to bounce ideas off of, you can commission me to body double with you and I'll gladly provide all the support I can. Thanks again for being here. Go get yourself a glass of water, and may the voices in your head be forever on your side. And unclench your jaw.